Chapter 11. At the start of the year, at the time when kings go on campaigns, David sent Joab and his servants and the entire army of Israel to bring the Ammonites to ruin, and they besieged Rabbah, while David stayed in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the rooftop of the king's house. From the rooftop, he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. David sent someone to inquire about the woman, and he reported,
"Is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite?"
Then David sent messengers to bring her. So she came in to him, and he lay down with her. This happened while she was purifying herself from her uncleanness. Afterward, she returned to her house. The woman became pregnant, and she sent a message to David.
"I am pregnant."
At this, David sent a message to Joab.
"Send to me Uriah the Hittite."
So Joab sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was getting along, how the troops were getting along, and how the war was going. David then said to Uriah,
"Go down to your house and relax."
When Uriah left the king's house, the king's courtesy gift was sent after him. However, Uriah slept at the entrance of the king's house with all the other servants of his lord, and he did not go down to his own house. So David was told,
Uriah did not go down to his own house.
At that, David said to Uriah,
"Have you not just returned from a journey? Why did you not go down to your own house?"
Uriah replied to David,
"The ark and Israel and Judah are dwelling in temporary shelters, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. So should I go into my own house to eat and drink and lie down with my wife? As surely as you live and are alive, I will not do this thing."
Then David said to Uriah,
"Stay here also today, and tomorrow I will send you away."
So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem on that day and the following day. David then sent for him to come and eat and drink with him, and he got him drunk. But in the evening he went out to sleep on his bed with the servants of his lord, and he did not go down to his house. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. He wrote in the letter,
"Put Uriah in the front lines where the fighting is fiercest. Then retreat from behind him, so that he will be struck down and die."
Joab had been carefully watching the city, and he stationed Uriah where he knew there were mighty warriors. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of David's servants fell, and Uriah the Hittite was among those who died. Joab now reported to David all the news about the war. He instructed the messenger,
"When you finish speaking to the king about all the news of the war, the king may become angry and say to you, 'Why did you have to go so near to the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot from the top of the wall? Who struck down Abimelech, the son of Jerubbesheth? Was it not a woman who threw an upper millstone on him from the top of the wall, causing his death at Thebez? Why did you have to go so close to the wall?' Then say, 'Your servant Uriah the Hittite also died.'"
So the messenger went and told David everything that Joab had sent him to tell. Then the messenger told David,
"Their men overpowered us, and they came out against us in the field, but we drove them back to the entrance of the city gate. And the archers were shooting at your servants from the top of the wall, and some of the servants of the king died. Your servant, Uriah the Hittite, also died."
At that David said to the messenger,
"Say this to Joab. Do not let this matter trouble you, for the sword devours one as well as another. Intensify your battle against the city and conquer it, and encourage him."
When Uriah's wife heard that her husband Uriah had died, she began to mourn her husband. As soon as the mourning period was over, David sent for her and brought her to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But what David had done was very displeasing to Jehovah. Chapter 12. So Jehovah sent Nathan to David. He came in to him and said, There were 2 men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very many sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing but one small female lamb, which he had bought. He cared for it, and it grew up together with him and his sons. It would eat from the little food he had, and drink from his cup, and sleep in his arms. It became as a daughter to him. Later, a visitor came to the rich man, but he would not take any of his own sheep and cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him. At this, David grew very angry against the man, and he said to Nathan,
As surely as Jehovah is living, the man who did this deserves to die. And he should pay for the lamb 4 times over, because he did this and showed no compassion.
Then Nathan said to David, You are the man. This is what Jehovah the God of Israel says. I myself anointed you as king over Israel, and I rescued you from the hand of Saul. I was willing to give you your master's house and put your master's wives in your arms. And I gave you the house of Israel and of Judah. And as if that were not enough, I was willing to do much more for you. Why did you despise the word of Jehovah by doing what is bad in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword. Then you took his wife as your wife after you killed him by the sword of the Ammonites. Now a sword will never depart from your own house, because you despised me by taking the wife of Uriah the Hittite as your wife. This is what Jehovah says. Here I am bringing against you calamity from within your own house, and before your own eyes I will take your wives and give them to another man, and he will lie down with your wives in broad daylight. Although you acted in secret, I will do this in front of all Israel and in broad daylight. David then said to Nathan,
I have sinned against Jehovah.
Nathan replied to David, Jehovah in turn forgives your sin. You will not die. Nevertheless, because you have treated Jehovah with utter disrespect in this matter, the son just born to you will certainly die. Then Nathan went to his own house. And Jehovah struck the child whom Uriah's wife had borne to David, and he became sick. David pleaded with the true God in behalf of the boy. David went on a strict fast, and would go in and spend the night lying on the ground. So the elders of his house stood over him and tried to raise him up from the ground, but he refused and would not eat with them. On the 7th day the child died. But David's servants were afraid to tell him that the child was dead. They said,
While the child was alive, we spoke to him, and he did not listen to us. So how can we tell him that the child has died? He may do something terrible.
When David saw that his servants were whispering to one another, he discerned that the child had died. David said to his servants,
Has the child died?
They replied,
He has died.
So David got up from the ground. He washed, rubbed himself with oil, changed his clothing, and went to the house of Jehovah and prostrated himself. Afterward, he went to his house and asked for food to be brought to him, and he ate. His servants asked him,
Why have you acted in this way? While the child was alive, you fasted and kept weeping. But as soon as the child died, you got up and ate food.
He replied,
While the child was alive, I fasted and kept weeping because I said to myself, Who knows whether Jehovah may show me favor and let the child live? Now that he has died, why should I fast? Can I bring him back? I will go to him, but he will not return to me.
Then David comforted his wife Bathsheba. He went in to her and lay down with her. In time she bore a son, and he was named Solomon. And Jehovah loved him, and he sent word through Nathan the prophet to name him Jedediah, for the sake of Jehovah. Joab continued fighting against Rabbah of the Ammonites, and he captured the royal city. So Joab sent messengers to David and said,
I have fought against Rabbah, and I have captured the city of waters. Now gather the rest of the troops and encamp against the city and capture it. Otherwise, I will be the one to capture the city, and it will be credited to me.
So David gathered all the troops and went to Rabbah, and fought against it and captured it. Then he took the crown of Malcham from its head. The weight of it was a talent of gold, along with precious stones, and it was placed on David's head. He also took a vast amount of spoil from the city. And he brought out the people who were in it, and put them to work at sawing stones, at working with sharp iron instruments, and with iron axes, and at brick-making. That was what he did to all the cities of the Ammonites. Finally, David and all the troops returned to Jerusalem.